I'm Rob LeCurier at Wood 7 here with three amazing sound technicians on the film If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. So welcome to Ruy Garcia, Filipe Meseder, and Patrick Southern. Welcome, gentlemen. On this film, there's so much that we can talk about. There's so much nuance. There's a lot of silences. And I always wonder how the sound was integrated into production of the film quite early. Philippe, maybe you might want to speak to that first.
Yeah, well, when Mary first came to us, and Rui and I, we had these early conversations with Mary and Luke, the picture editor, Luke Johnston. It was very clear to us, from the very beginning that like sound was extremely important. And when we first read the scripts, it was apparent that it was written into the story, and that was the most important thing that like we had to take, moving like starting from the start of the film, keep it in mind like that the vision revolved around these big story moments that were about sound. So that was it was apparent right from the beginning. It was in her pitch deck that she made for us and for anyone else coming onto the film. It was written to the script, and just starting off from the very beginning, she told us also that the score of the film would be sound design. It would be all the elements in the film. It would be composed of her world, Linda's world.
Yeah, I think it's such a great example of where sound really takes like center stage. Like an analogy, sorry, an analogy would be like the zone of interest, where sound became so critical to the way the story is being told and to the audience's perception of what's happening on screen. The same thing happens here, and without the work that you guys have done, I just don't know if the film would have been as successful. So I wonder then. Director Mary Bronstein, she says that she wasn't really that interested in how an actual baby monitor sounds. Okay, she just wanted to, she was interested in how it sounds to Linda. And for the hospital sequences, she really wanted it to sound so oppressive that anyone would want to get out of there. And I certainly felt that way. Who from this group can give us the best understanding of what you were trying to achieve with all of those hospital-y sounds that become very, very unnerving?
Oh, I think all of us. But,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Rui, do you
I
want to
just
talk
wanna,
about
like,
yeah.
yeah, I just want to like say something that Mary had it written on her script, the sound. It's
Mhm.
not often that you read a script that's so sound forward, right? And I think she thought of sound as a big part of her storytelling, and that's very important. And it's curious that you say zone of interest because that director is also very sound forward. The difference
Mhm.
is that they had like 2 years to do it, and we had a little less time, but they have a lot of time to experiment on that. And I think just the story itself is oppressive, the whole story, right? There's like the whole world is collapsing around you. So
Mhm.
the baby monitor, Philippe can fill you with like all because we went through several iterations even during the mix.
We did.
Like this is driving us crazy, like because it goes throughout the whole movie. You're hearing this
Yeah.
sound and you have to do that. And so and the zone if of interest that I sorry I had a talk with the sound designer of that I heard, and he was talking about how they had to increase the volume of the oppressiveness because people get used to it. So it's a
Mhm.
very similar thing. We just had to change it because we didn't want it to be annoying, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting, and Philippe did a lot of layers of sound for it. We just tweaked, throughout the movie and placed it in different. It's
Yeah.
almost like a score for the movie, right? So
Yeah.
so you have to, it's like how much do you annoy the audience or just affect them, right? That's the fine line.
Yeah. And that was a big thing that, after we had like designed the sound for it, which came originally from one of the, it comes from the machinery, the medical machinery that is in the room with them. But then also is elaborated with a lot of interference, and it's dependent on how far she is from the room physically. So it changes and warbles in ways that add to the cacophony of it. And so throughout the process, after we had like essentially created the source for it, Rui and I had to go through kind of scene by scene and see like, is it cutting through enough? Is it doing what it's supposed to? Are we losing it? And there was many moments where it's bright and clear in focus. A lot of times it drops backwards in like behind the dialogue just so that it doesn't get stale essentially. And that was the same approach with the ocean waves outside of the motel as well. There's a lot of repetitiveness, a lot of rhythms in the backgrounds of this film that create kind of a monotonous cycle of that she's experiencing in her life. It becomes exhausting in a way, and
It
that was
it
the
really
approach.
does. Yeah. It's so it was I kept thinking this is towing a really, really, really fine line between it becoming annoying, and it never did, but it was just so exhausting and so unnerving, and it really put me in the shoes of what she was going through. And sound is so good at doing that. And I also wonder, Patrick, in a film like this, with so much heavy emotional content and subtle sound nuance, how do you ensure that production audio gives the post team enough to work with?
Well, you really live in the world of the film for a month and a half or 2 months or whatever it's going to be while you shoot it. And even these annoying devices, they did exist on set, and they were something that we had to sort of deal with. And I think that is the challenge, staying out of the way while also giving post as much as you can possibly give them. Um, and for this film, it wasn't too difficult to be transparent, to be honest. And the actors were delivering so much, and it was just such a delight to record, and then an unbelievable delight to hear how the sound design actually came together. Because again, you're kind of like for me, like we're very much in the moment and we're in the experience of the film. Um, and we don't necessarily know while we're doing these recordings how the sound design is really going to work, right? Like we read the script as well, but it's the recording process is somewhat speculative.
Yeah.
And it was again a true delight to hear that the mix came together in a way that I felt was consonant with my imagination of how this was going to sound.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be such a highlight when you deliver up what you can and then see what they do with it and it comes out like this. It's so good.
Right.
Um, yeah, Philippe, I'm just thinking as well, like, can you talk us through, for people who aren't totally familiar with the process, is the film soundscape typically designed like a blueprint in the beginning, or is most of it discovered later in post?
Well, I would say it's a little of everything, right? We in this film there was a lot of preliminary conversations that we had with Mary, and to what Patrick was saying, like that it came out in a way that he was kind of imagining it already. I think that that is a full testament to the script itself and how it was guiding all of us from the very start. I think everyone kind of knew already what it sounded like before we even got there because Mary did such a good job at just writing the world in there. So when the film first came to us, I had done like two or three scenes for them, just out of context of the rest of the film, because they were looking for the sound of the hole when it blasts like this light into Linda's face, and then the very first time you see the machine in the motel room, there's like this whole sequence of her like putting together her daughter's like food and turning the machine on, and there's like this whole like startup sequence essentially. Um, and so that's where we started finding the language of it. It was through just kind of happy accidents, just experimenting. And I was lucky to have been given a little bit of time to just sit with these scenes. But it was from those scenes that we really did find the language of the film, which then we took and filled out the rest of it. The that light, that sound of that light hitting her is actually the very first iteration of what became the kind of atonal drony score. It was from there that we figured out that those are the notes that we want to be using. And then it was from that startup sequence of the machine that we figured out the proper rhythm for us to just be hearing throughout the film through the baby monitor.
Yeah.
Um, and then as we started going, Mary and Luke and I and Rui, we sat in my room at Postworks together a lot, and we just listened to scenes and essentially designed the whole film like together in person. It was like kind of like a in-person scoring session. It was like there, in a sound of the film. I'm sorry, Rui?
How early? Your question was how early does sound come into the equation, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The blueprint thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So as I was saying, we had worked on a couple of scenes together, and so it was through finding the sounds of that startup of the medical machine and the light coming through the hole. That's exactly where we started, like really figuring out the language of the film. And uh yeah, sorry, I'm a little thrown. I'm not
That's
exactly
okay.
sure where I was, to be honest.
That's all right. That's fine.
Can I
I think I
jump
got
in?
enough.
Just
Yes,
I
Ray, go
really
for it.
like your question, Robert, and I want to just embellish what Philippe said that it's not often that this happens. Like I was just saying to Patrick that we've worked in several projects together. It's the first time we see each other. I didn't even know how he looked like, and
Mhm.
I know dialogue editors that have talked with you and been in emails back and
Yep.
forth, but in this movie, Mary was so open to listening, and it's not just listening, like experimenting and playing and enjoying accidents because a lot of things that we ended up using were accidental, and that is so refreshing and it's not that usual. And this is not to talk about the director's work. It's more about our schedules and our budgets and the way movies are done, in which we've embraced efficiency instead of communication and artistry and community, right? So I always say I'll want to talk with the production designer before it's too late by the time they
Mhm.
finish recording, but sometimes we're not even hired until after they shot the movie, right?
Yeah.
And so this it was very, and I think the best sounding movies are the movies in which people are thinking about sound. You have to write it. You can't do it in post. It's
Yeah.
thought about it, and people listen to the production mixer. And I think sound design is as much in the script as in the production mixer. I think that should be kind of like a shared credit because everybody's
Mhm.
designing. We call it editing here. In other countries, they called it
Yeah.
different. So people think it's a technical thing, and it's as creative as photographing. It's like, what do you hear? What do you see? And what was amazing about Mary and Luke and everybody that was involved was that it's not literal. It's more, you just said it. It's like, is it annoying? If it's annoying and the character feels it's annoying, then it's okay. If it's
Yeah.
annoying because you as an audience think it's annoying, then it's not okay. So that was like the threshold we chose, right? Or is it not cutting through? Is it taking you out of the movie? And as a production mixer, you're making choices that really affect what we do, right? Like what you decided to record actually makes it into the cut, and the editor decides to cut away because what they're listening to. So
Yeah.
it is
That's
not that
right.
often that people care so much about this.
Yeah, and on the back of that, Patrick, when you're capturing sound on location, home, the hotel exterior, what are typically going to be the biggest challenges, and what were the biggest challenges on this film? Because things get really off kilter with Linda, and her world is disintegrating, and the sound goes along for that journey as well.
I think one of the biggest challenges was, understanding that there's going to be a lot of kinetic movement, with the actors, and that their frankly their wires are very likely to be impacted by that movement. And at the same time, we want to allow the camera to be as free as possible. Like this was in a large part a very handheld feeling movie. And so, in our effort to be transparent, we really do have to stay out of the way in terms of the frame, but also we want those wires to sound good. And and so for this particular film, I felt like it was really about not just staying out of the way, but finding inventive ways to capture these sounds and this dialogue, um, in a way that like I am not interested in capturing the cleanest possible sound on location. I'm more interested in capturing the most authentic possible sound on location. And I know that that sometimes means that I'm passing the buck, right? Because I might be handing over something that's a little bit hairier than post might prefer. But in there, there might be something really invaluable, right? Like I know that the sounds of these machines are going to be replaced in post. I know that. But how much can we get on the day? And how far can we push that limit to where we're feeling like, okay, this is actually a little bit irresponsible for us to allow these sounds to continue. And that kind of tension and understanding where that threshold should be is different for every film.
Yeah.
And this one I chose to have a very open an open threshold with respect to which sounds were I allowed to happen, if you will.
Yeah, what was acceptable to get through. Yeah, totally
Exactly.
get that. Philippe, can you point to a particular moment in the film where you think experimentation really shaped the scene in in a way that traditional sound design maybe wouldn't have?
Yeah. Experimentation was throughout the whole thing, I would say. There was never a moment where we were following the quote unquote rules, right? Um, Starting with Rui's idea, actually, in the very beginning, while we were spotting, that we should open the film with Linda in the center channel and everybody else around her. That was a big question of will this work? You know, will it be distracting and will it take the audience out? We found quickly that it was conveying what we had in our heads. And so that was that was a big experiment that followed us throughout the whole film, finding the moments to do that and then finding the moments to not do that as to not take away from the story. Um, the other big moment of experimentation was writing this essentially music score that came from entirely recorded material that is in the film, and also just source material that we went out and recorded. Um, I had never composed score for a film before, and although I wouldn't say that this is exactly a score, it's certainly something that I've never done before, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big one. And all of that was done with Mary. We sat together for a long time as I made these patch instruments made out of a bunch of different source materials, stretched and tonalized, and we played it together. I would sit there and we would make these patches with Radium, that's its sound miner, or Reason, or just sometimes just playing them through like just different plugins in Pro Tools, kind of just totally making it up as we went and just feeling the vibe, like just seeing where it took us. So that
Yeah.
those are two major parts of the film, like the mix of all the dialogue and the score that were completely up to like experimentation and was never necessarily planned. We just knew
Mm.
that we needed something like that to convey Linda's like isolation and just like the kind of mental breakdown that goes out throughout the film.
Yeah. It sounds like so much fun, actually, just for professionals, technicians to be able to really go to places that you haven't really been before. That's very, very cool. My final question is really just circling back on my zone of interest comment earlier, and that is awards often spotlight loud films, musicals,
Yeah.
but now and then a quiet film, so to speak, breaks through, like Johnny Byrne did a couple of years ago for the Zone of Interest at the Oscars. Such a great moment. I was desperately hoping he would win that award for that very reason. Does that kind of recognition, guys, feel important to you? Or do you feel that subtle work, not blockbuster action work, is sometimes still overlooked? That's an open question.
It's a big question. I don't think any of us that work in independent films like really work for like awards, because it rarely happens, And I think if they talk, like a friend or editor friend of mine says like if the best edited movie won every year, it would usually be a documentary because you have to figure out what to do with just the material that you have. And I had a friend that
Yeah.
got nominated for a movie that had like six cuts in the whole movie, and it's like, yes, they were like really great cuts, but we did like six cuts in the whole movie. So
Wow.
it's I do think that people don't even know that sound is done in movies. I think if anything, people think Patrick records all the sound and we mix it by making it louder or softer.
Yeah, that's it.
So
Yeah.
that's why the idea of design or artist
Yeah.
is important. But like what Philippe said that he didn't know if he could call it score. I think you can call it score. I think like for me, like the movie that I saw Rumblefish, which is a tiny black and white movie, independent, and that made me, oh, I want to work on this, because it's like, is this music? Is this sound design? And is why does it sound so cool? This is like composing, and it's because it's not literal, and they just decided to do this like super expressionistic thing, which is what this movie has. I think the Zone of Interest is a little bit more, it's more straightforward in a way. It's just like very bold and very like in your
Mhm.
face. And it's because there's two stories happening, right? You have the story of the sound and the story that you're watching, which is interesting. In this
Mhm.
movie, what you said, it's like you totally get in the character, right? And what Patrick said is like character is important. It's not cleanliness, it's you get character. And what's happening now with plugins and all this stuff is like you hear movies and they're super clean and they have like zero character, right? Like I want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hear that noise and what was happening there. And so I think it's good when people recognize it, and I've gotten calls, Philippe has gotten calls, of people that I've just fellow sound designers that I know or just Pete is like, oh my God, this was so moving. I really felt it. And talking about experimentation, working with somebody that's so open to just feeling, you're right. And that was amazing about this. We were laughing through the whole mix. I don't think we
Yeah.
we were stressed because we had like no time to do this. Philippe and I, half of it, we did it in our houses, like that's the way of independent movie is like, okay, let's take the notes and then we'll fix it and bring it back, and but that's so much more fun because you are doing a creative process with somebody that's really involved than
Yeah.
having this huge budget and
Yeah.
just going, like this, check, 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 check.
Yeah.
And I think that's the price. But yeah, people like loud movies or like more sound is better sound, right? And sometimes like the quietest moment in a movie is the most touching, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Um, Thank you guys so much for your time today. Like this is a perfect example of Patrick capturing as much as possible in the best possible way. Philippe obviously designing all of that with then of course with Rui at the end to get that final mix just right. This film smashed it out of the park. Congratulations on some great work and thank you again for your time.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for listening, Robert. Yeah.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
we'll come